my fellow Americans? Are we reaping our harvest of greed? Have we built our house on sinking sand? Why are we being ugly Americans?
Welcome to our show today. This is CJ Holmes, founder of Homeowners for Justice, and your host for today's weekdays live show. And it's really, it's fascinating to me. There's all the signs of the times. I'm going to keep you up to speed, you know that. But I'm telling you, we've got some powerful tools. We just need to know what they are and how to use them. So that's why I'm excited, because it's both depressing and energizing. And this is the transition that we're facing. This is the, you don't know whether to cry, to scream, or to laugh, or to be triumphant. It's just such a mixture of emotions. So today we're going to really quickly hit on some of the key things you need to be really aware of. These are the dynamics. This is the cliff we're looking at. We're standing on the cliff and we're looking at it. We need to get everybody in the country, in the planet, on the same page, because then those tools that we have for the transition, we can all use them, and they will become more and more powerful as people use them. Look, if you're going to dig a hole and you have all these shovels sitting around you and you use your hands, what can I say? Go pick up the shovel and let's use those. That's the talk for today. So I really wanted to bring to your attention again, there's some excellent articles and a couple of really little blurbs I'm going to play about the imperialness of the presidency. And this, of course, goes with the executive orders I already showed you in May 28. I'm going to show them again today, because this is the presidential dictatorship is in reach. They've already got these rules. They've already got them in place. And the first article we're going to show you actually discusses how these things are coming true, how they're being used right now. So don't forget, 2001, they had the National Emergency Act. 2007, National Defense Authorization Act. 2010, an executive order. This is a presidential executive order. He just writes this up and what? It becomes law? And I haven't even had time to figure out how do we nullify that? How do we stop that? Can we stop that? What do we need to do to stop that? So the Presidential Decision Directive 51, which expands the military in domestic security, and we saw just yesterday that the military just say to us, okay, we can police your streets now. And the people are just sitting here like, oh, wait. And then in 2012, last year, the National Defense Resources Preparedness Act, that's its actually executive order number 13603, so that you can look it up, look at it on Wikipedia, has the whole link there. And this is the article that they're talking about. This is written just on June 9th, just a couple days ago, this year. And this is the first article in a 4-part series. He's going to be writing about this dictatorial imperialness that is already in existence and what is happening. So, for example, just a quick rundown, we already have 7,000 drones. What? Operating from a growing number of secret bases around the world. They have a Joint Special Operations Command, 60,000 people in 75 nations. The first unit of American assassins in U.S. history. So now we have what? We've codified this. This has become okay somehow, without you and me even thinking about it, discussing it, voting on it, or even our representatives thinking, discussing, or voting on it. They've prosecuted more whistleblowers and journalists than even Cheney and Bush. I mean, this is just the pattern of dictatorship. They're just driving right towards it. Of course, now we know they've collected not only millions, it's actually trillions of phone calls from all of the providers. They've authorized the use of drones in the United States. The president has a right now to kill or imprison any person without trial, American citizen or not, on this country, foreign or domestic. They have huge biometric databases. I mean, this is truly completely out of control. And if you or any one of your family, friends, and neighbors doubt this, this is a really good article to forward to them in the email, to, share on your Facebook pages, because this hopefully will help wake up the family, friends, and neighbors to the fact that this is not just economic good news. That everything is fine now. No problems here. Move on. So this is a really good link. I wanted to play just this, a minute and 19 seconds. I want you to pay attention. This was uploaded on March 2009, but it was actually taken during the Bilderberg meeting in 2006. And listen to what's being said. This is '06. Remember now, '07 is when the loans exploded. They couldn't refinance. So loans exploded. People started losing their homes. In '08, they started listing these foreclosures on the market and ruining the prices. You listened. This is a reporter, a journalist that was there and has insider information about what's going on.
We're getting from this morning and this afternoon's conference. This morning conference was about the energy crisis, the price of oil. The afternoon conference, which started about 4 o'clock, 4:30, they were talking about one of the American delegates. I wasn't told who exactly it was talking about the the concern that the American citizens have had with the housing prices going down. So they're not investing that money. So what they needed to do is they needed to create the illusion that everything is going well. So what they're going to do over the next year and a half, is to bring the market back up to 1998, 1999 levels. They got to get all the suckers to invest whatever little money they have left over, and that's when they're going to make the economy's bottom drop out. They need to destroy the economy, because as we're running out of oil, when people don't travel, at least that's what they're saying, when people don't travel, when people don't have money, they don't travel, they don't spend any money, which means you don't waste a lot of oil and natural gas. That's the afternoon.
So how does this source, just ballpark, so you have the sources.
Well, actually, there are two people who are members of the Bilderberg Club.
It's actual members.
They're members of the Bilderberg Club who, for years and years and years, have been going and participating in all the conversations. They've always been dead on, always. And last year, they said the oil prices are going to go up to 150. At the time, it was 39. Went up to 76. Basically doubled. If it doubles again, it's going to be back to where these people.
They attack Iran and will it on it.
Did you catch that? These are insiders in the Bilderberg. They're whistleblowers. They're leakers. And they've leaked this information to this journalist who says they've always been right. It's complete manipulation. And they crashed the economy intentionally. If you needed any more information about that, please don't doubt it. Catherine Austin Fitts said that in the 80s they were talking about this, actually in the halls of government, about how the foreclosure crisis is going to crash the economy. This is just truly mind-boggling, because it is so not the way we've been manipulated into or brainwashed into thinking that our country operates. It does not operate this way, and we have to start recognizing how it really operates so that we can effectively change it and bring transition. And the best way to bring transition is to wake people up to this is how it really works. So share that. That's a really short little video. My Lord. There you have it. And this was 4 years ago. 4 years ago. We're just seeing this now. This is part of the issue. There's so much on the internet, and so we have to help focus and help funnel this information out to the people. I wanted to play just a few minutes. This is, and I want to get this on our comments link so that it'll be on the live stream library of shows and links. And this is the full-length version of the Obama deception. In here, in this full length, you'll see that short little segment I just played. I'm not going to play that now. I want to play some, I want you to hear, and this was uploaded on 2009, some of the commentary about how we got here and what is really going on. Again, this could be a really good link to send to family, friends, and neighbors. I know it's an hour, well, almost 2 hours, hour and 53 minutes. I'm starting at minute 54-ish. I've put that in the comment section. Over almost 13 million people have now seen this. So this is a very hard-hitting, it's about the deception. It's about the facts. It summarizes what we're already saying now and what we've, in our own separate research with our foreclosures and looking at all the fraud and why we can't get anybody to step up and rule correctly. I mean, it's truly almost hilarious if it wasn't so freaking serious. And that is, we can't get positive rulings for the people. At least not yet, and we're working on that. We hear rumors. I'm still trying to nail these down. And this is in '09, and Alex Jones is saying that we've reached a critical juncture in the New World Order's plans. And it is not about left and right, it's about one world government. And one thing that they said, a word they said about politics really struck me. I keep reminding myself, it's showtime. Politics, he says, is like professional wrestling. When you're on the, being filmed and videotaped and in the fake fight, it's all about, I hate this person, I'm going to chew him up. And then afterwards, big friends, they go out to dinner. And that's politics. That's the showtime that we've been treated to. And people need to understand. We need to understand also that it's showtime. And so to help ourselves not get caught up back into the way we're used to looking at life, it's a challenge. I'm experiencing it too. Shifting my perspective. Everything I hear, running it through the filter, going, now wait a minute, that doesn't jibe. What about this? What about that? Oh, they left that out. Oh, did you hear that? What a show. And start to shift the thinking process that we go through. This is really good, because what Alex has been doing, and we must do it ourselves, is shout out that the Federal Reserve, what it really is, it is not a federal institution, and it's a private bankers cartel.
Obama is a fantastic actor and an even better liar. His track record is clear. He has done the opposite of everything he told the people he would do.
They'll make up one lie after another. And if you believe these people, knock yourself out. I don't believe a word they say.
Within 1 month of the passage of the first banker bailout bill, the press reported that over $5 trillion had just disappeared out of the U.S. Treasury. By December, the amount of money that had been stolen had reached $8.5 trillion. The leadership of both political parties circled the wagons and would not discuss where the money had gone.
In the Fed! In the Fed! In the Fed! In the Fed!
Informed Americans protested the private Federal Reserve System at all 38 of their regional governorship offices.
Arrest Bernanke and Paulson! Arrest all the criminals that stole the banker bailout money!
It was refreshing to see people standing up against the real power structure, not being distracted by the elite's frontmen like George W. Bush and Barack Obama. We traveled to Dallas, Texas to cover We the People taking on the real enemy.
Hey, I want to talk to the workers up there on the parapet. The ones smoking cigarettes and just jump back. You're with the American people, we know that. But understand, as the workers inside, you're not in a federal government building, you're in a private Federal Reserve that uses that name as a fraud. That'd be like if my first name was Federal Reserve Jones. I'm still not the federal government. I'm not a federal agency. But if I said my name was Federal Reserve, I could go out and pay off politicians and get them to allow me to get into power so I could issue the currency and credit, and then I could buy up the world. That's what these criminals have done.
A lot of people think that the Federal Reserve is already part of the government. They're not. It's controlled by cliques of unelected, unaccountable bankers meeting in secret. Most of these people have never even been through the formality of a Senate hearing or a Senate confirmation. They claim that they're part of the U.S. government. They masquerade as if they were part of the U.S. government. But in reality, this is a purely private operation. Jackals, hyenas, raptors, all of them loyal, not to the American people, but to the Wall Street banks, which is where most of them come from.
Everyone is pointing to Barack right now, President Obama, as saying, you got to get the economy together. You got to get the economy together. When in fact, the president has very little to do with the economy. It's the Federal Reserve Chairman, that at least sets the policy. That's a privately owned company, the Federal Reserve Bank. They set the agenda.
These guys are masquerading as a federal institution. They are a private banking consortium, and this is their front, their holding company. The Federal Reserve is not federal. It's a front for a private banking cartel. That's on record in congressional testimony, and they're the ones orchestrating the economic collapse we're seeing right now, so that's why we're here.
While at the In the Fed rally outside the Federal Reserve Bank in Dallas, Texas, we spoke with Ron Paul's brother, Wayne Paul.
1913, the Federal Reserve Act was passed, floor of the House, where 3 members of Congress were on the floor. At that time, they only needed a majority of votes to pass it. So in 1913, the Federal Reserve Act was passed. 20 years later, 1933, under Roosevelt, the United States was declared bankrupt. And in 1933, the Federal Reserve Private Bank says, okay, USA, what are you going to pledge as collateral on the debt you owe me? What happened by 1936? Does anybody know? We instituted Social Security system, and you and I and our children and our children's children were pledged as collateral on the debt of our government to the Federal Reserve. And that's where we're at today. It took 20 years to make this country bankrupt, and since then, our government has operated under emergency powers of our government. It is not the president that makes the decision in this country. It's the Secretary of Treasury who turns around and is put in there by the Federal Reserve to manage the bankruptcy. We've been in bankruptcy ever since. So to print $700 billion and to give it away, how do they get away with it? The manager of the bankruptcy is told by the Federal Reserve this is the way to go. That's where we're at today.
Yes, we should point out, Congressman Ron Paul now has a huge amount of sponsors for a bill in the House of Representatives to abolish the private Federal Reserve crime syndicate.
In 1913, the money power of the country was taken away from the people. By constitutional privilege, it belongs with the Congress, but it was given up in the Federal Reserve Act. The Federal Reserve is no more federal than Federal Express, but yet it has the power to determine the direction of use of money in our economy. If we could take that power back and put the Federal Reserve under Treasury, we start to be in a position of being able to control monetary policy on behalf of the United States people.
The Federal Reserve is totally private, and Alan Greenspan 2 weeks ago on PBS on Lair NewsHour said, on record, that they are above the law, the Congress, the President, everyone. No court can do anything. We run America.
What is the proper relationship, what should be the proper relationship between a chairman of the Fed and a president of the United States?
Well, first of all, the Federal Reserve is an independent agency, and that means basically that there is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take. So long as that is in place and there is no evidence that the administration or the Congress or anybody else is requesting that we do things other than what we think is the appropriate thing, then what the relationships are don't frankly matter.
Notice what Greenspan is saying. Greenspan is saying the Federal Reserve is beyond the law. And in reality, they are in practice beyond the law. Nobody, as far as I know, has ever audited the Federal Reserve. One of the first things we ought to do when we nationalize the Fed is go in there and find out the audit. Who stole money? Who engaged in corruption? There's a whole series of people going back to Volcker, to Greenspan, to Bernanke, and so forth.
Think of the arrogance of private group of banks that have bankrupted the nation by design so they can repo the country. A private group of banks that loaned us our own money back are telling us they're above the law. You are not above the law, criminals.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law, and the private Federal Reserve sure as hell isn't either.
Since the founding of the Federal Reserve back under Woodrow Wilson, the Federal Reserve has struck out 3 times. They didn't stop the crash of 1929. They didn't stop the banking panic of 1932, 1933. And now they are the cause of the derivatives crisis because they're the ones who inflicted derivatives on the world with Alan Greenspan.
Instead of our economy being about goods and services and real products and manufacturing, it's all about these guys, the private Federal Reserve that masquerades as a government entity who controls the issuance of currency and credit. They're the ones that have cut off the liquidity in the market. They told us have a debt-based economy. Then they cut it off once they get us under their thumb and implode the economy so they can consolidate it. And that's what they're doing right now. I mean, it's in their own documents, it's in their own statements. They claim, give us unlimited power, give us trillions of dollars with the banker bailout bill that's already $5 trillion, not $850 billion as they say. And we'll get the economy going, but they're hoarding the money and buying up other banks that aren't part of the Federal Reserve, buying up insurance companies, buying up roads, infrastructures, media empires, defense contractors. What the banks do is they implode an economy by cutting off credit, and then once things really fall to a low, and they know the low because then they buy everything up and start then putting more money back into the economy, and then they build it back up. So they build us up and then shear us, build us up and shear us. And they're getting ready. All over the world, they're always shearing some country, imploding it. Comes out in their own IMF and World Bank documents. That's just the foreign arm of the same cartel.
And these are the people who claim to be the saviors of the economy, the people who have created every important crisis in the past 100 years, the Federal Reserve. So it's illegal, it's unconstitutional, and it's a failure. And I think the failure is what everybody can see right now.
Yeah, what they do is they make you think Clinton's evil in running things. Then, oh, Bush will save us. And then, oh, Bush was evil. Now we'll be saved by Barack Obama, but he's just a puppet. But as we get deeper into this phase, when they implode the economy, they have all the money and all the control. But they also like to pose as the savior. So Obama is meant to be the savior during the Depression, and he'll save us with a 1 million person, he said, is bigger than our military, domestic spy force, a 3 million person environmental spy force. So giving people these jobs to be government bureaucrats and spies to go out and manage the other 290-something million Americans. And so this is classical fascism. The communists also do it. Any vertically integrated command and control authoritarian system does this. So they're openly following what the same group of banks did in Germany, Russia. It's in the Communist Manifesto to have a private central bank because the private central bankers actually wrote the ideas that they had Marx and Engels put out. People go, well, why would the banks want communism? It doesn't exist. They rape us, they consolidate us, they put us into work brigades, they make us slaves, and they say it's a people's paradise. Look at it, boy, you're really doing good. And then they transfer all the wealth of the nation offshore. The globalists are outside all the nations. That gives them safety, and they play countries off against each other. And so that's what we're facing and dealing with. And so they're bringing in classical, hardcore tyranny in the U.S., but we have the internet. We've grown our numbers. The alternative media has exploded. That's why they're trying to move in to shut down and regulate and tax the web, but it's too late for them. They're playing in the 19th century, 20th century rules. It's 21st century, the century of resistance to tyranny. And so it's going to be one hell of a fight with the people and free humanity on one side and the New World Order on the other. And every one of you out there counts, needs to be involved in this fight like nothing you've been involved with before, because this is life and death. Everything depends on exposing these people. Everything depends on showing the people that this is the New World Order, this is the criminals. We're dealing with the king rats here, the people that are carrying out tyranny worldwide. And either they fall or we fall. Either worldwide darkness and a new age of tyranny and oppression with a scientific overlay, or a new age of liberty and freedom and a new renaissance. The choice is the people's out there. Okay, we can tell you what's going on. You can check it out for yourself and find out it's true. But don't wait. Investigate now. Get involved now. Go out there and reach out now. We don't have time. If you're looking for the solution, look in the mirror. Look right into the mirror, because you out there, men, women, old, young, black, white, doesn't matter. It's going to be up to you if they win or if liberty succeeds and the people have a chance of having any future. These are cold-blooded eugenicists. These are cold-blooded people who think they're God, think that they're our masters, that think that we're animals. These are the guys that funded Lenin and Stalin and Hitler and Mao. These are the guys, it's all on record, that bankroll this stuff. They are hardcore vicious, and they must be resisted.
Pretty powerful. Thank you, Alex Jones. They are hardcore vicious, and they are. And here's the point. Because every place I look, literally everyone, they're ranting. And they're saying, you know, wake up, wake up, wake up. Okay, I'm awake. You got me. Here's what's missing. And this is the future. We've got to give it. It's one thing to say, stop, stop, stop. It's another thing to say, go, go, go. So this is why I'm pushing for what we can do to fix this. Where do the people turn? Do they just walk on these streets and then get tear gassed by the military? Because, you know, admittedly, they already have all the guns. And in '09, he is saying how many more people that Obama and the presidency and the agencies have than even the military. Even if we brought all of our guys home to protect us, we couldn't do it. They'd be outgunned. So that is the catch. It's the depression, but it's the opportunity. It's the crisis and the opportunity. And this is why I'm going to show this screen, and then I'm going to go back and talk again about these kinds of things. We need to push the great transition. It'll stop the foreclosures. It will stop the tyranny. It will stop all of us participating in the money scheme. It's what has been advised over and over, from Gandhi to David to nonviolent opting out. So the question is, how do you opt out? How do you opt out? Well, we opt out by setting up our own institutions, and we can do this locally. This is, as centralism breaks down, localism grows. This is where the grass is. This is where we are. These are our family, friends, neighbors, cities, counties. That should be our real focus. It's almost impossible, and we can call those people and talk to them and maybe get some of them to whistle blow or come onto our side or see the error of the ways of that agency, but we, the people, do not have the ability until we are 10 million, 50 million strong to necessarily change some of these federal level agencies. But we can right now, individually, you, me, go out, talk to supervisors, talk to city council members, talk to benefactors. So this is the point. This is the great transition. Did you hear what he said? And I've actually, after right in the middle of that, watching that, I put it on pause and I sent an email to Infowars.com, one of the editors, and I said, look, thanks for keeping us up to date, but ranting isn't gonna cut it. It's not enough. We must push the great transition. We have to tell the people how we can create institutions for our benefit right under their noses. We have to do with this right now. We can't wait until they stop trying to enslave us. They're going to continue to try to do that. But what we need to do, we can do. We have the laws and we have the technology to do that. And I want to focus on actually bringing people on that know how to do this and having them explain it to us, and focus into, developing checklists and little guides and manuals, because that's what's missing. So we're working on that. If you want to help, please let me know, because we can use all the help we can get. But nevertheless, this is the transition. If we don't have to use their money for any of their loans, if we can create community development financial institutions, get public banks started and working. Remember, 20 states are actually considering laws to have a state level public bank. But if you're in a city and the city is large enough, they could do their own public bank. You might have more clout than you think, because, for example, I just read into this morning's paper for me. So what did you read in your paper? Think about it. Is the enormous debt load that the county or the city is facing for something, either pension funds or streets or some kind of redevelopment project, and they've got this huge debt burden. A community development financial institution, a public bank, could ease that debt burden. They could put the bank together, use their own assets, create credit, fund themselves, pay off that debt, that heavy debt. with that heavy interest that just sucks the lifeblood out of the community, and they could keep it for the public benefit. And then alternate currencies, time banks, commercial transactions where one company, where they're trading goods and services, and there's a bank, a way to sort of formalize that transaction and transition. So you're trading without bartering, without actually using currency. These are alternate ways that we can use to protect ourselves, beneficial corporations and nonprofit institutions. So I reached out to InfoWars, and I'm going to continue to reach out to all of these places. You guys know them. You probably look at other places I don't even know of yet. Reach out, email them, tell them, get on board. Start feeding your public hope, true hope, and true change, and true transition. I'm going to start blogging on these items. I'm going to start focusing on that like I am today. I'm going to start bringing these, item by item into focus, into clarity, into discussion, into how would you go about doing this if you're in some community, you don't know anybody else, you're the only person there that's interacting with me right now with, live stream. How do you start? What would be the normal thing to do? Is there some handout? Is there some email you could send? Those kinds of grassroots nitty-gritty details of how do we get the news out. So some action items: we could send the letters, of course, to our representatives. We could connect with other activism efforts, and that's what I wanted to take a little segue right now and say, do that. Reach out, send them an email, go to contact us. These guys are usually easier to contact than our state representatives. I just sent an email. I don't know if I'll get any response, but I'll send another one. Keep up the pressure. And then, of course, we can research some of the other things and abilities that come, and I've got some more for you. So let's move on. Back to, here's someone, and I'm not going to focus on this a lot, but this happens to be an article from Martin Andelman. And you know what an advocate he has been for foreclosures and fighting. But here's this, you can read it. And I just wanted to make a couple of comments. To me, it's obviously he's really depressed. He doesn't have any more answers. He's basically saying the only thing that has even a hope of working is a loan modification. He dismisses the fear that if you make all your payments, you still won't have the house. He just dismisses that and calls it, that it's non-existent. And of course, my question is, what about the people that have already lost their homes and didn't even have a loan? What about all this fraud? What about all this title clouding? He basically says he's written over 900 articles in the past 4 years and 100 podcasts, and he wants to blog about a success, and he says he can't. He talks about the real estate market as if somehow realtors are making it up or something. The fact is, evidently, a realtor came by his house, knocked on the door, and says, "Hey, you want to sell?" And he's going, "What? This is crazy. You're selling cookies?" Now you just walk around the neighborhood asking if people want to sell their house. What is going on? Well, what is going on is the banks are foreclosing. They're keeping the inventory. They're not listing that at all. They just hold them. Prices are ballooning. Nationwide, 1/3 of all the home sales in March were made with all cash. You've heard me say that before. In some areas, it's as high as 50%. Actually, in some areas, when the prices are low enough, it's as high as 90%. 90% of all the home sales are all cash. So you and I both know, and I'm a real estate broker, so I really understand, and I'm trying to share that with you, that means first-time home buyers aren't buying. It's cash. It's either families for building a family compound, or homes for other members of the family, or it's hedge funds, or it's just flat investors. They think I can just pay for cash, do whatever fixes are needed, rent it out, have a positive cash flow. And cash is notoriously flaky. At a moment's notice, someone with cash can just change their mind. They're not going to live in the house. So if you have some kind of a cash purchase, then it's an investment, or it's based on some kind of future potential gain, you can quickly change your mind and back out of the sale, even before it closes. And this, when massive amounts of cash buyers decide to do that, it will shift and it will shake again the real estate market. I totally expect that to happen. I just don't know exactly when, and if I see signs, I'll be warning you. But the point is, Mandelman is depressed. He doesn't have any good news. So let's give him some good news. Let's send to him, let's get him on board with the future, with where we can succeed. Here, imagine this. What if we, here's something that's been in my mind for a while. Do you remember a while back, and I haven't looked it up again, it just occurred to me to say this, that, you know, some of these world's billionaires have actually committed to, like, charitably giving away half their money. I think Buffett, Gates, some others, I don't recall exactly whom. We could certainly Google it and find out like that. What if we went to them and we said, you know something, why just give it away? Why not create a beneficial financing institution where, you know, the money is kept as the reserves. You've created 10 times the credit, so now you've expanded your money 10 times. Let's go and buy all these defaulted mortgages from all the people in the country. How many billions would it take? Somebody could figure that out. Mandelman said in his little article he's expecting another 6 million underwater to be foreclosed. Already we've lost 6 to 8 million. We already know that. So what if we got these beneficial financing institutions where all the profits rolled back into the institution? Hey, these benefactors are going to give the money away anyway, so why don't we make it a self-perpetuating funding source for financing for homeowners, so that they would no longer deal with Ocwen or B of A or Wells Fargo or Greentree, any of those sharks and dragons, and they could actually get a loan at 2% 30-year fixed, that they could actually keep their house, know that it was never would be securitized. See, let's put these ideas together. There's a solution for the foreclosures. Okay, help me think these through. This is one of my pushes in the background amongst the 16 projects I'm already working on. And of course, more bad news. Can we trust the trustees? These are bankruptcy trustees. No, of course not. Of course not. And this is just an article published just late last year about the nepotism, the convoluted interaction of one entity playing all these different parts. So of course they're going to foreclose. How can you fight against that? And so this is research, and they point out here that the second issue is that many trustees are simply not neutral. Gee, shock. In many cases, in most states, the trustees in non-judicial foreclosures are either the attorney for the bank, that's foreclosing, or they're employed by a company that is owned by attorneys for the bank. Cottage industry, sometimes referred to as foreclosure mills, sprung up. In these mills, attorneys churn out foreclosures in mass at bargain bulk prices. These same attorneys may own title companies that do the title work related to foreclosure. They may serve as debt collectors for the bank prior to or after foreclosure, and they often represent the same banks in actions to remove homeowners from their homes after foreclosure, unlawful detainers. So as a result, there's tremendous financial incentives for the trustees to keep the repeat business of the banks, both because they make money in the foreclosure process, and they often make additional money representing the bank and related foreclosure matters before and after the foreclosure. These close financial ties between the bank and the trustee, the ethical duty to represent the bank zealously, despite a duty to be neutral to the homeowner, well, the homeowners get thrown under the bus, as you and I both know. So this is another article that's well written in a very neutral manner about the facts that could be shared and absorbed by those that might be negative towards deadbeat homeowners. And the fact is, the results are shocking and troubling. Reports from throughout the country are emerging that suggest that wrongful foreclosures, which amount essentially to home theft, are occurring regularly. These range from foreclosures carried out by parties without standing to foreclosures in situations where there were no default at all. So this is a nicely well-written, researched article by the University of Denver, College of Law, that we can shift out to the public to help fight back against the deadbeat homeowner myth. So we have to fight against, but we have to fight for. So here's a sales pitch. Share this with a proposal. Why can't we set up a beneficial financing institution? Maybe beneficial is a good word, a non-profit rather than public. A lot of people have, negative feels about having some other public, agency in charge because all the public agencies seem out of control right now. So maybe a non-profit institution able to pick up this financing and modify these people's loans. That's a really good presentation of both the facts and the opportunity. Here's something else. I just got a request this morning that there's a foreclosure bill in Michigan, of course, that would allow homeowners to be shoved out the door faster than normal, because in some of these states, and some don't have them, California does not have this, but other states have what they call a redemption period. After the foreclosure, there is a certain period of time, normally it's 6 months, that the homeowner could somehow scramble and get together enough monies to keep the property and buy the property back, get it back out of foreclosure. And of course, this bill, Senate Bill 383, would shorten the 6 month to 60 days, 2 months, get out. And so they're begging for our help. If you're in Michigan, if you're an activist, you have some extra time, call Michigan, call these legislators, fight against this Senate bill, try to get this stopped, try to help those people at least have their 6 months. This is the problem. The attack and the pressure to take the real estate and the properties, just like Alex said, it's intentional and it's relentless, and they have all the money on the planet because they stole the people's rights. And this is what I found myself writing, so I want to say it, and I'll probably say it again and again and again, and that is the right to create credit for liquidity. Basically, the fractional reserve banking system, there's nothing wrong with that, where 10% is held in reserves for cash demands, but the 90% can be loaned out and in the community for liquidity. That's the basic, real simplified, of fractional reserve banking. There's nothing wrong with that. The wrong part is that the private banksters stole that right from the people, and whenever they create credit, they only create it with debt, and they force everybody to pay them the interest rates. So all the profits of the Federal Reserve and all the private banking institutions, which is virtually all of them, flow back into banker pockets. And they get to create this credit out of nothing. So of course they win. Hello, just think about it. What if you had that authority? What if I had that authority? What if you were suddenly given the authority to say, I'll create as much money as I want. Okay, I'll pick $1 trillion. What could you buy? Who could you buy off? What would you do with that? So just start thinking about, the fact is that right is the people's right. It is our right as humans, as humanity, as people, to have this kind of a system without the banksters stealing all the gain from it. Any gain from that system should go back to the people. It should benefit you, should benefit me. And that's how we get public banking or non-profit banking back the profits back into the people. If it's nonprofit, then any gains out of the system go back into the system to benefit the people. Increase the reserves so that the loans can be increased. Increase the facility of funding local development, keeping interest rates low, 1%, 2%, for community development, for infrastructure, for things the community needs. Keep that wealth in-house. That's what we're talking about. And we can do that right now, right under their noses. While they try to enslave us with their system, we can opt out nonviolently, quietly, completely out of that money system. We can opt into our own nonprofit credit creation financing institutions. And that's the message, that's the great transition of pulling that power, the right of the people. The people have the right to create their own money to benefit themselves and not some bankster cartel, which turns them into just mega thugs. That's the message we need to get out. That's what we need to send to all of these alternative media all over the country, all over the world. Everybody in alternative media everywhere needs to start preaching this so that everybody that's following, I don't care if they're in South Africa, I don't care if they're in India, I don't care if they're in Britain, I don't care if they're in Iceland, we all need to do this as humanity. The 7 billion of us need to do that and stop the 140 that are actually right now the puppets of the 10. Of course, Fannie and Freddie shareholders are suing the government for the takeover. They're saying that the government cheated them. What else is new? Of course the government has cheated them. The government is cheating anybody, everybody, any way and every way it can. Now, here's some of the power. I want to go back. We've talked about the foreclosure battles and the imperial presidency and what's coming down the pike, but here's some other tools of the great transition. So one is jury nullification. And if you're like me, you're going, huh? What is that? And then I'm going to also show you the article on local nonprofits, because it's not just nonprofit financing institutions or public banks or beneficial corporations. There's other things that can be done. So jury nullification. Who knew? Who knew? See, we the people don't even know what our framers gave us. So here it is. I love this article. We're going to start here, and then I want you to listen to the guide. For those of you who don't know much about jury nullification, basically, it's when a jury finds a defendant innocent because the jury dislikes the law. For example, a jury might refuse to convict a nonviolent drug offender because they disagree with the fundamental premise of drug laws themselves. Interesting. Isn't that interesting? In other words, we can judge the law in a trial, not just the person. Throughout the United States, judges have forbidden defense attorneys from informing juries that they have a right to nullify the law based on their dislike of the law. Fascinating. In California, for example, jurors are required to inform on other jurors if one of them argues that the law is bad. The judge will then replace that juror with an alternate. A defense attorney who argues on grounds of nullification could face disbarment or other sanctions by the court, even though nullification is a right all of us as U.S. jurors pose under common law. And so, welcome to New Hampshire. You know what their little title is on their license plates. It's live free or die. And welcome to New Hampshire. So on June 18, New Hampshire governor signed HB 146, which reads, right of accused in all criminal proceedings, the court shall permit the defense to inform the jury of its right to judge the facts and the application of the law in relation to the facts in controversy. So, what we need to do, and this was 11 months ago, so this was last June, this was just about a year ago, that this was published in New Hampshire. So I'm going to focus on that law. Here's something we need to do in every state. Come on, guys. We need to push for this law. Let's get our legislatures, state legislatures, to get something like this enacted in every state. Because this, and tell the people we have the power against the laws we don't like in the jury case, when we're on juries. So, of course, the article goes on. I have the feeling the New Hampshire law will end up having a tremendous effect on the American judicial system as a whole. If enough people start nullifying drug laws in New Hampshire, eventually New Hampshire prosecutors will be forced to stop prosecuting drug offenses in that state. A Montana case never even made it to trial because prosecutors could not find enough people who would be willing to convict the person based on drug charges. Fascinating article. You can continue it. I want to have you listen to this. This is, in the article, it talks here, right down here, Thomas Woods. He's a historian, and he explains the impact of nullification by state legislatures and juries throughout America's history. This is 48 minutes, so you can watch that, but I stopped when he said, please watch Interview with a Zombie. So here's Interview with a Zombie for our edification and understanding.
Welcome to Interview with a Zombie. Today, Dr. Thomas Woods discusses his new book, Nullification. Dr. Woods holds a bachelor's degree in history from Harvard and his master's and PhD from Columbia University. And now, your host, a zombie.
Book. Yes, I wrote this book called Nullification, and the argument in it basically is as follows, that right now our federal government basically does whatever it wants without any constitutional restraints, and in fact, if you raise the issue of the Constitution, you say, where do you get the authority to do thus and so? They laugh. They actually laugh at you. So I want to remind people of what Thomas Jefferson said, that if the federal government does something that's unconstitutional, you shouldn't enforce it. Obviously, if a law is unconstitutional, it's not a law at all. And he and Madison actually said in 1798 that the states were duty-bound to resist if the federal government went beyond its legitimate constitutional boundaries. Duty-bound to resist. And as a matter of fact, you can summarize Jefferson's argument really in just one sentence, which is that if the federal government is allowed to have a monopoly on determining what its own powers are, we have no right to be surprised when it keeps discovering new ones.
Neo-Confederate.
Well, actually, no. I think it's important to point out that northern states had recourse to these principles more often than southern ones did. So I think that's actually a misconception that you're operating on.
Slavery.
Well, no. Actually, nullification was never used on behalf of slavery. But you know what it was used on behalf of?
Slavery?
No. It was used on behalf of the cause of fighting the fugitive slave laws. Now, notwithstanding the fugitive slave clause in the Constitution, nevertheless, there were aspects of the fugitive slave law that was passed in 1850 that were constitutionally dubious, and numerous northern states did everything they could to obstruct the enforcement of that law. As a matter of fact, let me just quote for you from just one state, Wisconsin. The state legislature, the state Supreme Court fought against that. But here's just a handbill that was distributed on the streets of Milwaukee in the 1850s. And notice, it's arguing that the states can resist unconstitutional measures by the federal government. Listen to this. All the people of this state who are opposed to being made slaves or slave catchers and to having the free soil of Wisconsin made the hunting ground for human kidnappers, and all who are willing to unite in a state league to defend our state sovereignty, our state courts, and our state and national constitutions against the flagrant usurpations of U.S. judges, commissioners, and marshals and their attorneys, and to maintain inviolate those great constitutional safeguards of freedom, the writ of habeas corpus and the right of trial by jury, as old and sacred as constitutional liberty itself. And it goes on to say, all those who share these principles should gather for a mass meeting and take such action as the exigencies of the times and the cause of imperiled liberty demand. So I think it's really a mistake to associate these principles.
Racism.
No, I mean, did you hear what I just said? I think it's very important to understand. This was used to defend blacks who had run away.
Racism.
Well, look, it's true. Racial oppression can occur at any level of government. When you're dealing with government, you're dealing with the most dangerous monopoly that has ever existed in history. But the point is that today, in 2010, when everybody has the right to vote, where are the greatest threats to our liberties coming from? Boise? Santa Fe? No, obviously not from places like that, but from Washington, D.C. As a matter of fact, look back to the 20th century. Where were the greatest outrages against the dignity of mankind perpetrated? In large centralized states. As a matter of fact, Hitler, for example. Hitler was... Yes, I know I said Hitler's name. But my point is that Hitler was a lifelong foe of states' rights because he saw states' rights as an obstacle to his exercise of absolute power. I mean, why wouldn't Hitler support states' rights? In fact, let me quote Hitler. This is Hitler from Mein Kampf, and I quote him in my book, Nullification. Here's Hitler saying the Nazis would totally eliminate states' rights altogether. And he goes on to say National Socialism, that's the Nazis, as a matter of principle, must lay claim to the right to force its principles on the whole German nation without consideration of previous federated state boundaries. So whose side is Hitler on? He certainly doesn't favor nullification. So if nullification is all about oppressing people, and states' rights are all about oppressing people, how come Hitler is such an opponent of it?
Neo-Confederate.
All right, let me come at this from a totally different angle. Let's look at the causes on behalf of which nullification was employed in the 19th century, beginning with 1798, the late 18th century, when it was first sort of codified, as it were, in the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions. What did Jefferson and Madison fight against in those resolutions? Well, they're fighting against violations of free speech by the federal government. So nullification is being used on behalf of free speech. It's used on behalf of free trade. It's used to fight against unconstitutional searches and seizures. It's used to fight against the prospect of military conscription, to fight against the prospect of children being enlisted in the military without the consent of their parents. And as we've seen earlier, it was used to fight against the fugitive slave law. So it's a complete... when you use terms like neo-Confederate, which is just like one of these sort of zombie terms... Well, pardon me, I withdraw that statement. No, you're right. But it is one of these terms that people just throw out because they think it'll just shut down all debate. If I utter this term, no one will be able to continue debate. But I think
Racism.
I'm thinking maybe we're really not making progress here. I mean, I'm trying to make arguments that are at least reasonably thought-provoking, and you're just throwing...
Racism.
Yeah, see, you're just throwing code words at me and scary-sounding propaganda words. See, that's not an argument. That does not count as an argument. I've already answered all this. No, that is not a substitute for an argument. You try to do this all the time to people, and this has got to stop. The zombies are doing too much of this. This has got to stop. We have to have real arguments. If you're just going to sit there and throw words at me instead of making an argument, I mean, if you're not even going to use your brain.
Brains.
Classic. They've used nullification to protect our rights. We need to learn everything we can about this. So here is another website, the Fully Informed Jury Association. I know you'll love it. I know this is going to be coming back into our conversation. This is a discussion, and I'm going to scroll down so you know where to look. The Juror's Guide. And here you go, on the grand jury, the Juror's Handbook, the current state constitutional authority for jury veto, what to do if you're called for jury duty and if you're facing charges. And this website works to inform potential jurors, which is all of us virtually, of their traditional legal authority to refuse to enforce corrupt laws. Inform potential jurors they cannot be required to check their conscience at the courthouse door. To inform potential jurors they cannot be punished for their verdict. And to inform everyone that juror veto, juror nullification, is a peaceful, nonviolent way to protect human rights against corrupt politicians and government tyranny. So let's spread this word. Let's get this out. This is the first I've ever heard of it. So, it takes time for ideas to percolate through our society. But as we use our effort and our connections with these other websites we're looking at, let's push the great transition. We can use juror nullification. We have clout. We have clout we didn't know we had. Let's learn how to use it, and let's tell everyone we know about this. When people are depressed, get them looking at the positives. This is something that they could do to help change, to help bring about the great transition. Otherwise, it's just, too depressing to think about how these thugs are going to, enslave us. But only if we stop, only if we let them. So we're not stopping. We're not going to let them. We're going to keep waking the people and giving them the tools. Let's give them the shovels so that we can dig our holes. Let's give them the mason, the tools so that they can build a new edifice, a new building the people can build. So let's help each other do this. And one last thing before we go, because I know we're running a little long, but how nonprofits can help improve local economies. This is the key. And you know something? The laws are there. We can use them. We can set these up right now. They just need to do it. And so this happens to be a university hospital's case study. And can a hospital's economic development strategy do more to heal the city than the emergency room? This is an MIT discussion, and it's an analysis of the University Hospital's 2010 program from Cleveland, Ohio. And so they're talking about how can a nonprofit help benefit the local community. They have about a 45-minute discussion. You're welcome to listen to that. But this is what I wanted to point out. Community and healthcare leaders are discovering that hospitals can help heal entire cities through economic development by rethinking the way we do business, and by being more purposeful. Healthcare systems can create jobs and wealth by favoring local businesses wherever they can. They can overcome historical barriers that have kept women and minority businesses out of the mainstream. And they can earn the trust and goodwill of the neighbors so that we can better fulfill, the institutions can better fulfill their nonprofit mission of helping and healing. And this reminds me what I talked about yesterday, where a group of an organization sits down and looks at all the procurement for the city, for the county. What are the things they're buying? And then goes down the list and says, well, gee, that could be local, check. That could be local, ding. This is what the hospital is doing. Well, let's look down the procurement. So let's go, here's something. Go to the hospitals in your area, say, hey, what are you guys buying? I'd like to see your procurement list, and maybe you could buy locally. And build our own economy, keeping these large buyers buying locally. See, it's grassroots, and I'm telling you, that can happen. Well, here's a concept. What if the health hospital, the large entity, would actually say, well, yeah, sure, we'll help fund your startup so that you can buy, so we can buy from you. What if we got them to start funding the businesses locally? Can't hurt to ask. So as the pressure comes down from on high, let's grow our economy, because the stronger we are, the more people can keep their homes, the more they don't have to stress over the loss of income, but there's more jobs. The stronger the community, then the less control the thugs have over us. That's my message for today. And share that help me get it out to all the ranters and ravers around the planet, because they're ranting for good cause. It's absolutely correct. I'm totally in agreement with virtually everything they're saying. We have records to prove it. And look at what they're doing in foreclosures. Look at the fraud. Look at the corruption. But that just because you have a loan, just because you lost a house, just because you lost your job, doesn't mean that that's you. You are still you and have the energy and the willingness to start fresh and to help put some of these plans in place. And truly, as we opt out of their system non-violently, they come to control and they can't control. That's the goal.
When I was a lass,
See you tomorrow.
I was proud of me class, like my father and mother before me. They taught me to fight for my civil rights, but it's always the same old story. The rich reign supreme while the poor can but dream, under Labour or Liberal or Tory. And I say, bugger the bankers and politicians, bugger the bureaucrats too, bugger the buggers who make up the rules, and if you're one of them, bugger you, and if you're one of them, bugger you.
The system is bent and the money's all spent. We're battered from every direction.
The workers get taxed while the wealthy relax, with nary a moment's reflection. When it's grass, there's muck, and they don't give an arse, 'cause they're programmed against insurrection. And I say, bugger the bankers and politicians, bugger the bureaucrats too, bugger the buggers who make up the rules, and if you're one of them, bugger you, and if you're one of them, bugger you. Now all you good people with passion to vent, don't give up the struggle for justice. But I've done my time on the protesters' line, and these days I show my dissent by loitering